Hi, Sarah.
Hi, how are you?
I'm
Thanks for
well.
having me today.
Yeah, thanks so much for doing this. I'm really excited to chat with you. I'm obviously excited to hear a little bit about your story, how you came to live an alcohol-free lifestyle, but also excited to hear from you because you bring with you a wealth of product knowledge, of reviews, of recommendations, and I think it's especially exciting to chat with somebody like you who is so familiar with what is available. Because even thinking about my own story, I'll be 8 years without alcohol this year. And when I think about like the early phases of that decision, like my options were incredibly limited. And now I'm finding myself standing in some aisle, sometimes baffled by the amount of decisions that I have. And before we started recording, we were chatting a little bit about like what that means to kind of like still live a life that is full and, options allow you to kind of like live that life. So all of that said, thank you for joining me.
Yeah, thank you so much. We were also, the thing that I want to just share is that we were just talking about how many people you've interviewed on this podcast over the years and just how incredible it is that, to your point, when we started this back in, I started becoming, I chose an alcohol free lifestyle at the beginning of 2020, right before the pandemic. And then I took about 8 months of what I call just like, trying to pass the test for about 8 months before I finally. And when I say that, I don't mean it was moderation. It was like I'm going to try every day not to drink, and I'm going to slowly wean myself off of the addiction. And there wasn't anything at the time. There wasn't anything to really. There really was nothing for us to turn to, and I couldn't imagine a life of just sparkling water for the rest of my life. And I've said this so many times, but it never gets old. I would think about this, that we were making the world had already figured out how to make great hamburgers out of beans. Certainly somebody's going to be able to make a non-alcoholic wine, or a vodka that tastes like vodka without, or not vodka, but a gin that tastes like a gin without alcohol. And I mean, I could foresee that this was sort of the next phase of innovation, but at the time it felt just so bleak and desolate, and there were players in the industry like starting to appear. But now you've interviewed over 100 people on your podcast who have, made an impact, chose this lifestyle, and, from all different types of walks of life, and specifically the bar industry, the hospitality industry. It always warms my heart when I hear about more and more bartenders saying, I'm choosing, I've gotten sober, or I'm choosing to moderate. I'm, living an alcohol-free lifestyle, but I'm really interested in the hospitality experience. And that's, we can touch on that later, but it's really cool. It's really cool where we've come in the last 5 years.
Yeah, absolutely. I remember how many grapefruit juice and tonics I was drinking before I could actually have something in my hand that I would deem like a proper cocktail.
Yeah, I mean, I still love grapefruit juice and tonic, but I just now add some gin to it.
Yeah.
Non-alcoholic gin.
So you can walk me back as far as you like, but what I'm interested in hearing about is, a point in your life where you thought about your relationship to alcohol. And, I like to ask it like that because so much of my life as the drinking self was on repeat. And I was never really identifying anything in my life. I never once questioned what is my relationship to alcohol. And it took some kind of like starts and stops with some months off before I finally took that moment at the end of a sober October, and I was like, wow, I do feel good without alcohol. And that kind of like kick started the whole thought process of this might be a way that I want to live moving forward.
Yeah. Well, it's funny because I knew almost my whole life I knew that I had a problem with drinking. Like, since I knew in my 20s I was the one who always overdrank and did embarrassing things at the bar and other people didn't. And then in my 30s I knew, I was one of the only moms bringing who, we would joke about bringing gin and tonics in our, sippy cups to the farmers market, and it was a joke for most people but not for me. It really was an ongoing battle in my head for 2 decades, probably. Maybe not 2 decades, but definitely about 15 years of occasionally I would Google, am I an alcoholic? And, oh gosh, I got to cut back. I'd try, I'd moderate. And then addiction kind of runs in my family. My grandfather passed away from alcohol abuse when my mom was very young, so I never got to meet him. But that made the ripple effect on my family. My parents never drank in front of us at all. There was never alcohol in the house. And then, of course, then I rebelled, and that made me want it even more. And so I was desperate in high school to try alcohol, and then in university overdrank in frosh week and almost got alcohol poisoning. So I do believe that there's some, they've said that it's a combination of like genetics versus nurture versus nature, I guess, that like, there's things in your environment that make you want to drink. And I think that partially, like the minute I started drinking wine, I was like, oh, I love this. Didn't like beer, didn't care about cocktails. So I wasn't that much of a heavy drinker in high school. Really, I didn't. My parents were very strict. It wasn't until university when I discovered wine where I was like, oh, this is sophisticated and it looks cool and I'm not getting drunk. I'm drinking wine. And that's sort of led to this whole like the mommy wine culture. In my 20s, always at bars, I'd be the one drinking the wine at clubs and everybody else is drinking cocktails. But I'm like, I got my wine. And then the mommy drinking culture of like, gotta have parenting is so hard. You gotta overdrink. I got sucked into that. And a lot of people can go through motherhood and never fall into the trap of like, I need something to cope.
Yeah.
But I had whatever that was in my head. It was like, didn't get that there was other ways to cope, I think. So it's been a lifelong thought process. And it wasn't until, I don't even remember what tripped me. Something tripped me. December 2019. I was like, I think there had been a couple of like things that I'd done that I was very uncomfortable with and with myself. And some people say, what was the one thing that pushed you over the edge? I'm like, I don't even remember. It was like a series of things that were cringy, that I was embarrassed about, that I was, once I'd had too much to drink and I drove a couple of blocks home from my office. It wasn't far, but it was 1:00 in the morning. But, that is so, I think back now, I'm like, holy crap, like what a dangerous, stupid thing to do. But you rationalize it, right? When what really happened was, well, we'll get into that in a second, but basically your question was, how long has this been on my mind? Forever, like for a long time. And I'm really glad that I finally came to terms with it.
Yeah. And you're starting to talk a little bit about that kind of like glimmer of what's next. And I think like as a drinking person, especially if you're somebody that like drinks heavily on occasion, you do your best to kind of like write your own narrative to stay within control. Like you are aware of some of your boundaries, even though you typically push beyond them on nights of drinking. But some of those things that like cause like guilt or embarrassment or just like a tinge of anxiety, I was feeling very similar toward me making the decision as well, where it's just like I feel out of control, not in the sense that I'm going to go spiral and do something insane. It's just, I don't feel like I have all of my like bolts tightened right now.
Yeah.
And that thought scared me.
Yeah.
It wasn't of what I did. It's what I could see what was
Potentially
capable of. Yeah.
what you're capable of. Yeah. And I used to laugh like, we're going to end up in Mexico without passports one day. I'm like, that never happened. But like the potential for me to go be overboard was always there. And I think if it wasn't for my husband now, so my husband really was the one who, when we were out at a club and it was 2:00 and I was like, let's have more. He was like, we're going home now. Like he was my boyfriend at the time. And thankfully having that like more rational voice, somebody who wasn't, addicted or like wanted to drink a lot, probably saved me from a lot of harm, a lot of self-harm and a lot of harm to others and a lot of like stupid decisions.
What did conversations with yourself sound like when you started pushing in the other direction?
Towards not drinking?
Yeah.
It was such and I have to explain what happened, why I stopped. Or like what, not the why, but the like what happened to actually make me stop. And then you'll understand this conversation in my head. I had downloaded this drink counter app. And which is so funny because when you're drinking a lot, you know how much you're drinking. You don't need to count. But it's like, it was some way, like it was like, I need something. I had never thought about going on Instagram either. Like it was a weird thing. I had never thought about going on Instagram to find a community. It wasn't until much later that I did that. But this drinks app had a community and they connect you with people who have also joined the app that day or whatever. They connect you into a group. So there's about 10 or 15 people in this group and you chat within the app. And this one guy had said, well, I'm 30 days alcohol free. And everybody was like, whoa, like, how did you do that? And he's like, oh, I read this book called This Naked Mind by Annie Grace. And I was like, oh my God, gotta get that. I immediately downloaded it. And I think I read it in 48 hours. And it was such a switch. It was the light, my love affair with alcohol, literally the light switch went off immediately, like as soon as I stopped reading that book. Because she does a great job of like, a lot of the literature, the quit lit, it talks about the harms of alcohol and what it does to your body and how to cope with, withdrawal and all this kind of stuff. She really does something different where she delves into our belief system around alcohol And that's the thing that did it for me was like, oh yeah, the posters are showing the glamour, but it's not showing the after effects. I didn't know about anxiety. I didn't know there was a term for it. I just knew that like there were times when I would have a fun night with my friends that we'd drink all night, we'd have so much fun, we'd be laughing. And the next day I would feel like the clouds were gray, that my life was, blah and bleak. And I'd have to remind myself, you had fun last night. And I didn't realize that that was anxiety. And so all this stuff like, physical, understanding what it physically does. And people might laugh at this, but I literally did not know until I read Annie Grace's book. It was the first book I read about, first piece of Quitlet. I literally did not know that alcohol is the same, like ethanol is the same thing you put into your car. I didn't know that. And it was like, boom, are you kidding me? Am I allowed to swear?
Yeah,
Are
absolutely.
you fucking kidding me? Are you fucking kidding me? Like I was literally blown away that like what am I doing to myself? But also what her book taught me, and then so back to the question of what was going through my head. Her book really taught me that it's not the person. And a lot of people in Alcoholics Anonymous will disagree with me on this, but she really talks about how you don't say cocaineaholic. You don't say smokeaholic. You say somebody's addicted to cocaine, somebody's addicted to cigarettes. It takes the onus off of the person and onto the substance. And all of a sudden that really shifted my that all of a sudden I was able to forgive myself. So that's number one. I was able to forgive myself. And forgiveness of yourself is huge. Like it's huge because you think there's something wrong with you. Why can't I control my drinking like everybody else? What's wrong with me? Like why am I hiding alcohol in my closet? That was another thing, I've heard this from other moms after the fact that we all did it. We all hid alcohol in our closets. And I was like, wow, I thought I was so original. That's another thing about the sober community on Instagram is like, you realize nothing's original. We've all done the things, right? So forgiveness, I was able to forgive myself in my head, but then trying for those 8 months where I was, trying to pass the test, not pass, I was trying to get an A on the test every day, not necessarily 100. And that was the thing that I was always like conscious of. It was still difficult though. It was still like really having to be uncomfortable with being uncomfortable, being comfortable with being uncomfortable in your own skin and your own body, because the knowledge that the alcohol is leaving your system is one thing. The other piece of that is your neuroplasticity. You have to rewire your brain channels, and that doesn't happen overnight. And so I just kept telling myself, this is a process, but I'm not a journaler. I hate it when people are like, just journal. I actually fucking hate journaling, even though I'm a writer. I hate journaling. Who are you talking to in your diary? Like it feels weird. But I did journal a little bit. I did because I had to. I had to like get some of these thoughts down on paper, and I have the book still. And every once in a while, I go back and look at how sorrowful I was, but also the miracle of peeling back the onion and understanding all the things. Now I'm so clear. Narcissistic mother, childhood trauma, bullying, low self-esteem, low self-confidence, all these things, feeling left out, wanting a friend, all these onion layers were falling away as I was uncovering. So that was the blessing. While you're walking through the darkness, there's all these blessings. And that's the only way I can describe cleaning yourself up, like cleaning your life up like this. It's like you're walking through the darkest time, but there's so much golden sunshine at the same time. It's crazy. It's like all the joy and all of a sudden you're feeling. And that was another thing going through my mind was just like, oh my God, I'm feeling life. I'm present. I'm not yelling at my husband over something stupid because I've been drinking while I would be making dinner. The kids aren't annoying me because the evenings were always the same. I'd have a glass of wine as soon as I got home. Sorry, I shouldn't have clapped like that. That's going to blow out the audio. I'd have a glass of wine as soon as I got home from work. And then I'd have a glass of wine while I was making dinner. And then I'd have another glass of wine. Oh, look at that. I'm getting some fireworks there. um,
The
but
pyrotechnics budget on this is
pyrotechnics budget, yeah. So by the time I got home, or by the time 7 or 8 o'clock rolled around, I was hungover already, but not knowing that, not realizing that. So the kids were irritating me. I'm putting them to bed when I'm at my least best potential to be their mother. So that was the blessing. Is like, you're walking through this darkness of trying to get rid of something, trying to rewire your entire life and your entire body, but the beautiful joy of like peeling back the onion, understanding yourself and being present in your life is just, it's like the dark and the light at the same time.
I love what you said, all of a sudden I'm feeling, because that's so true. You feel all of it. And there's a version of yourself that would have been so scary
Yeah.
to hear.
Yeah.
You know, you're numbing so much.
Yeah.
Things that I've like talked about quite a few times on here is like you're numbing the things that you don't want to deal with, but in doing so, you're so unaware that you're numbing all of your good parts too, and
Yeah.
you're never showing up with your full potential.
Yeah.
When you were feeling, how did it feel to feel and be in those moments of those, those thoughts that you maybe were numbing or afraid of? And then also, how did it feel to be in just kind of the softness of
Yeah, it was joyful. It was really like I kind of look back now and it was like a bit of a honeymoon, not a honeymoon because now it's just every day. It's like, all right, here we are. This is life, right? I read another book that was and I've mentioned this throughout the years as the other critical. There was two books, This Naked Mind, and then this other one is called The Sober Lush. And I don't know if you've heard of that book, but you've got to interview the two writers. It's an older book, like they published it, I think, 2020. But it's all about the lushness of life when you quit drinking and that you're actually like not addicted to life, but it's like a lush experience. And that really helped me refocus too in the moments of like, here's an example of the softness. I love that that's how you explain it because that's exactly what it is. There's a lot of times where I would get up in the morning and even though it's a good thing that you're waking up not hungover and it's always still like the thrill is wearing off now after 5 years, but like for those first few years, it was such a thrill to be awake on a Saturday or Sunday morning without a hangover. Like clear headed, ready to go. But it still felt empty at the beginning. It felt empty. Like my life was a bit empty, like I should be struggling or something. I remember once I went on a bike ride by myself down to the water and was just sitting on the beach, like looking out at the not sure how I was feeling about this, like clear-headed emptiness a little bit. But then I had read this book, The Sober Lush, and I realized this is one of the moments that they're talking about, the lushness. You're feeling the breeze, you're hearing the ocean, you're smelling not the ocean, sorry, it's a lake, but you're smelling the smells of the fresh air. You're hearing the birds, like the sun is beating on your body, you're alive, and it's like the lush feeling of like, oh my God, I'm alive.
yeah.
It's so soft and gentle. With drinking, you feel emotion on a peak and a cliff. Like it's a peak and a cliff. Everything is very extreme. When you're not drinking, and especially at the beginning, the emotions are so much more gentle. And so you're sitting and soft, and you're just like, they come slowly, and you feel this, it's almost like an etherealness. For me, it was a bit of etherealness at the beginning. Now I'm like, it's just every day. This is life.
Yeah.
This is the way life is, but it's such a stark contrast. Such a stark contrast to the way you live life when you're drinking every day. And just to clarify too, people always ask, how much were you drinking? And I hate answering that sometimes because I call it sobriety rubbernecking.
Yeah.
Right? People want to know. They want to hear like the story that I like, fell asleep, in my car, or fell asleep on the street, lost my shoes, whatever. That wasn't the case. I was drinking wine at home all the time. A lot, right? And just to cope with life, having a job, a high performance marketing job, my kids, my husband and I, there's always ups and downs in marriages, right? So it was just such an emotional roller coaster and a physical roller coaster all the time too. So yeah, I love how you described that, the softness. It's very gentle and your life starts to like the peaks, the hard edges start to really like kind of soften out.
Yeah, definitely. Even like it was tough realizing that the problems that I didn't want to face were nameless. I was scared of anything popping up, but I didn't have a name for it. I didn't really have an occasion or something that I was like pushing away. I was putting up a defense in case a problem were to arise because I didn't think that I was like capable of dealing with it. And when I removed that barrier that was alcohol, the problems seemed to arrive with the same softness that the good parts of life did as well. They still showed up. It was a rap on the door, but it wasn't as like a calamity that I thought it
Yeah.
was. Realizing that I could sit in that presence, the same one that you're describing of, feeling all around you that is the lake, like these problems arise. And I realize, okay, I'm much more equipped to sit through this if it's something that I can sit through. Or I know enough now that I can name this thing. And in naming it, I'm already deflating it and I can work through it. And it isn't something that I maybe have to get over fully in just this day. Like it's that acceptance of life and its approach to softness, and knowing that this problem too can be handled throughout the days, that it is a process, that it is something that I can carry through with me, and I don't have to fear it. I don't have to fear its arrival in the way that I thought I would have to before I decided to remove alcohol.
I love that. I'm just, wow, that's really, it's so true. I'm like grasping for words a little bit just because I'm processing that. It's really a really nice way of putting it that like they still rap on the door, the problems still knock on the door, but it's not as an extreme calamity. And it's like the capability, all of a sudden you have a capability, a resilience that yeah, the problems don't go away. The problems are still there, but you know, my mother-in-law is always going to be my mother-in-law, right? Like it doesn't matter. That's not going to go away. But yeah, it's how we're able to deal with things that come up and know that the problem doesn't need to be solved right away, but also flying off the handle. Like I used to fly off the handle about everything all the time. And I think my husband flew off the handle first, and then I started mimicking him. Not really, but like I feel like with our kids, it was like, oh my god, you spilled water! Ah, you used water all over the floor. Like it felt like now I'm just like, hey, we spilled some water. We're gonna clean it up. Like so, I feel like I flew off the handle. Whether it was a small problem or a big problem, everything had the same escalation level.
Mm.
And that may not have been just the alcohol, that it might have been just more self-awareness, but that the alcohol was and being feeling crappy about myself all the time was sort of preventing me from figuring that out, I guess. So that's another good point actually, is that you, along with the resilience, it gives you space to learn about yourself
Yeah.
way more, about who you are. Even now I'm questioning, like when I first started Some Good Clean Fun, I was like hell bent on like writing a magazine, winning awards, gonna do all these things in the non-alcoholic space. And even now I'm like, is that necessary? Do I need that? Or am I happy just writing what I write? Making an impact on people. I wanted to have 1 million followers on Instagram. Now I'm like, okay, I have 3,000. Like the Instagram gods have not been with me, and like that's just my point is I'm still reassessing and learning about myself even now. And I think that when alcohol T-bones you in your 20s or whenever you start to drink, you stop developing yourself. I don't think that's going to be the same for everyone, but I definitely feel like I had one goal in my 20s, and that was like to every, you know, 4 nights a week be out having fun. My husband, who was my boyfriend at the time, you know, he wasn't like that. He was like, we'll go out once or twice. But I was like, let's go. We're gonna go for dinner. Gonna have drinks. Like, gonna have drinks with my office coworkers. Like, it was, my goal was always like, you know, Monday, I'm like, where are we having fun this week? Like Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. You kind of stop developing yourself, and you go through the motions of professional development or emotional development or personal development. You go through the motions, but I don't think it's real. It's not real until like you have a clear head. And this is not the same for everyone, but also people who don't have any tendency to overdrink and are going to, you know, they might say, I'm great with who I am. I've developed myself because they only have a glass of wine here or there. That's fine. It doesn't mean if you drink at all, you can't develop yourself. I'm talking about people who are, you know, coping like I was, and, you know, using alcohol as a way to escape from who they are and what they're meant for. You know, a lot of my days, I shouldn't say this, but, you know, at least once a day I regret not doing what I should have done in my 20s. Like I regret not using my 20s as a time for better professional development, figuring out who I was. I ended up in a career I hated. I hate marketing. It's so boring. Like, I mean, it's not boring, but I hated what I was doing, and I was meant for different things, and now it's almost too late, you know, to get into some of the things that I want to do, but not too late. But yeah, it's, sorry, I'm off on a tangent a little bit, but I think it all goes
No,
back
it
to,
all makes sense. Yeah.
yeah.
And, you know, we don't live back there. And I think that's a good reminder. That's something that I always have to remind myself, because I'm visited by regret all the time. You think about what would it be if I made this decision, but then you think about it and you're like, I didn't make that decision because I couldn't make that decision back then, because I wasn't thinking this way, or I didn't give myself the grace that I needed to make that decision. I wasn't equipped with the tools. I didn't experience the type of heartache within myself that requires somebody to spin that spotlight around and see where we're living in that life. It wasn't required because it wasn't necessary at the time. And just as like one day something clicked for you in your head, same did for me. And it happens for a lot of folks. And that's when we turn the heel. And that's as far back really as I am willing to let myself go these days, because I can't change
Yeah.
anything, but I can
That's
continue to
smart.
progress this version.
That's really smart. That's really smart because it's, I guess I shouldn't say I think about it every day, but yeah, I think maybe I should get out of my regret a little bit. I am doing a lot of great stuff, and I think I often forget the impact that I've made, especially when I get notes from readers. So I had an article published just recently, and somebody found my email and emailed me and said, "Thank you for that article. I discovered non-alcoholic drinks, and I appreciate that you're writing about it." And it reminds me that, like, okay, I may be, regret some of those life decisions back then, but I'm doing my best to sort of make up for it, and especially not just professionally, but with my kids too. There's no way that my daughter and I would be best friends now if I had continued drinking. There's no way. And I have a really close relationship with both my kids. She's 16 turning 17, and my son is 13. And they were just old enough they remember the smell.
Mm-hmm.
And they remember some things, but not enough. So it's sort of, they were at a good age for me to stop drinking. But that's definitely like a regret that I try not to even ever think about, because it's so bad. It's such a deep, deep, dark place. The regret of like not being there for your kids is really a terrible place to go. So I try not to think about that at all, and I just focus on every day like I'm showing up for them. And sometimes my husband will razz me like, "Why are you driving them to school?" And because it's raining. I'm like, "Because it's raining. Because I didn't do it when they were 5 or 6 or 7 or 8. Or maybe I did. You know what I mean? Like there were times I didn't do what I should have when they were younger, and so now I try and make up for it by these little things. And they'll remember these things.
Those are big. I mean, if you think back on your own memories of your childhood, like the largest things aren't often the ones that appear that often, but being driven to school or a quiet conversation here and there, like those things are going to come up. Can you talk to me a little bit about some good, clean fun? What
Yeah.
inspired that? How is it? I could see something like that being grown out of just the possibilities to explore selfishly and then learning what it can mean to a community. Did it kind of have that flow?
Yeah, it was actually, like, in a nutshell, when I first started this, I was like, I want to start an online store. Okay, I'm not a retailer. I've never worked in retail. Literally, I didn't even understand what the difference between wholesale and distribution was. So I started building this website to like sell non-alcoholic drinks, because I could see it was going to start to like grow, or at least I wanted to be the first when it did. And I was like, I don't like this. This is not for me. Like shipping costs, and because you have to, at the time, everything was coming from the UK and it was really expensive, and from Europe. So I was like, this is not what I want to do for a living. I do not want to like sell drinks. It was just, that was the first place my curiosity kind of drove me. And then, well, actually, even taking a further step back, the first time I tried, and I don't remember what the brand was, but the first time that I tried a non-alcoholic gin, or not Seedlip, not Seedlip, let's clear the air on that. I hate Seedlip. I think it's terrible, but this was a stronger one. And I think might have been Liars, it might have been Dose. I don't remember, but the penny dropped in such a clear way. My God, somebody out there cares what a non-drinker is drinking. Somebody out there actually cares about what my drink tastes like as a non-drinker. It blew my mind, and I was like, this is incredible. I tried to start this online store, didn't get very far, started building the website, and I'm like, I don't want to do this. Then I realized I've been a writer and a content creator. I went to film school and I'm very creative. I'm like, I'm going to start a blog about what I'm drinking. And so that's how it started, and then it grew from there. The more people were reading it, and I found people asking me questions about things and what's good in the wine world. And I, years and years ago, I had studied wine a little bit, and I had wanted to kind of explore as a consumer how to taste wine. I was thinking about getting my W set just for fun. This is way back. So I used a lot of that wine knowledge, and I'm like, I'm going to apply that to some of these new wines that are coming out, and I was ranking them, and my ranking has changed so much over the years. Let me tell you, the stuff I drank back then versus now is like night and day. Like, I look back at some of my scoring and I'm like, I got to change the scores on these, because my palate has also changed from not having alcohol for so many years. But it really grew from a place of curiosity and that idea, like, I just want to tell the world, like, holy shit, you can have a really fucking great gin and tonic and it doesn't have alcohol in it. And you can go home at a decent hour and get up without a hangover. Like that was the trajectory, the storyline in my head. I just wanted to say, holy shit, everybody. And then it started like, okay, let's do some recipes, and then let's do some this. And then like, I had a little bit of lifestyle, now there's some lifestyle content on there. And I had for a while, I had some writers, like contributing writers and contributing, and that slowed down a little bit. And now it's sort of, some of it's moved over to Substack. Like the more recent, like the newsletter is over on Substack now. So it's kind of a merge of the website platform and content on Substack. But it still blows my mind how many new products are coming out every day and how many new options. And we've reached about a bit of like, I don't know what that's called, but like, market saturation, I think, when it comes to non-alcoholic gins, for instance, right? There's so many of them. Or do we need another bittersweet aperitivo? I don't know. Like there's so many of them out there. So I'm not saying there can't be more innovation, but I think we've done such a great job that that's almost boring now. Like years ago, I can't even believe I'm saying that, but years ago, like what a time to be alive when like there's too many non-alcoholic tequilas to choose from, right? And that's where we're at right now. Is just starting to continuing to build the like credibility of the non-alcoholic wine industry, for instance. So I'm a brand ambassador for a brand from Austria called Geronimo, and it is by far, what's that?
Their stuff is great.
I mean, it's the best. It's the best to me. It's the best in the world. I'm a brand ambassador, so contractually should be saying that, but I'm saying that as even if I wasn't, as a wine person, as a wine connoisseur, as somebody who studied wine, it's probably the best. And I can't even believe that it exists. I mean, what a time to be alive that like non-alcoholic wine is that good that I had some friends over for a dinner party the other night, and they were like, wow, if I hadn't read the label, I wouldn't know that was non-alcoholic. So that's sort of the thing that drives me is still I love wine. I've always loved wine, is to share what I'm drinking and like what's good. And one of the biggest complaints that I hear all the time is like, I've just wasted, $25 on a bottle that I dumped. And sometimes it's things I've recommended. And so part of it is education too, around everybody's taste buds are different. Like something that I love aged wine. I studied aged wine, and a dry Tempranillo from Spain that's been laying down for 20 years or a Barolo is like where I was at when I stopped drinking. And so that's what I'm looking for. And not everybody's looking for that. Some people like a juicier, fresher, younger wine. Some people don't like wine at all. Some people like beer. And that's another part of the industry that's really, it just blows my mind. Now, yeah, you're right. You said earlier, you go to the grocery store or you go wherever, and there's such a plethora of options in the beer section. I don't even know where to start. And I'm not a huge beer drinker, but I've become more of a beer connoisseur now because it is so enjoyable to just crack open a cold beer, and it tastes a little different when it's non-alcoholic too. It goes down better. Like, for me, it's like more satisfying, like more hydrating or something. So that's where, yeah, that's some good clean fun. And I didn't want to. My goal was never to become a content, like an influencer. It was more to share writing and share reviews, long form things. But I still, I'm on Instagram, some good, clean fun. And the conversation now in my personal life is a lot of women around me are shifting into talking about perimenopause. And that goes perfectly with alcohol, because the conversation, because alcohol affects everybody, but especially women in perimenopause. There's a lot of stuff that it really impacts your hormones. And when you're younger, it's not as obvious, but now, like, when your hormones are all up and down and whatever, it really can exacerbate how bad you're feeling in perimenopause. And so that's partially like the whole platform and the whole media, the whole like kind of brand is not moving into a perimenopause focused platform, but it's just sort of the topic that people are talking about now. So I find that that's a lot of the Instagram conversations are around alcohol and women aging. But I think men aging too also is, they experience similar things when you get older, and alcohol is not good for anybody at all, but like especially over 40 for anyone.
Yeah, it's interesting to think about that as well, especially because that can be that age demographic is something that is like, this is what I do. I'm sticking with it. I don't really care if you were to tell me it does this and that. Well, I already buy it and I already consume it. But I do think folks are way more open to the conversation. They're way more open to understanding, the investment that is, what am I putting into my body? What does it truly mean? How does it truly interact with me? And if you tell somebody that you're drinking a non-alcoholic wine, for the most part, like their immediate reaction isn't, oh, what happened? It's, oh, is it
Yeah.
good? Like it's
Yes.
really shifting. So
Yes.
what are some of those conversations like with those folks that are talking about it?
Well, it's so interesting because, one of my closest friends, like, she hasn't really been that open about her shifting in drinking habits, but like her husband and I, like I said to her the other day, Mike was always my best drinking buddy. She's like, yeah, Mike's everybody's best drinking buddy because he's similar to me in that he loves to socialize and go out and whatever. And in my mind, in my memory, she always drank as much as I did, and now I'm realizing it wasn't. She didn't. She was always the one telling Mike and I to stop drinking. He was always the one like, let's anyway. So she and I were having dinner the other night, and she said it a couple times over the last 6 months or so. She's sort of hinted, and I didn't. Sometimes you just need a fucking sledgehammer to hit me over the head with things. Like, I don't see it. She said, we went to a non-alcoholic beer festival together. She was the one who initiated it, but I thought it was just she was doing it to be kind to me.
Yeah.
But I've realized now that she has really cut back. She's like, I hardly ever drink anymore. And we had a really honest conversation about that, and that was really cool. But what I'm realizing is so many people in my life are just like, yeah, I'm not really drinking anymore. And it's okay. Or if I'm saying I'm going to a 50th birthday party, and I know that if I had gone to that 50th birthday party with the same group of people 4 years ago, and I've been at events with the same group of people, and they've, oh, you're not drinking? One person in the group would have been like, yeah, no, I brought a non-alcoholic beer with me too. And now I think, like, we're going to go out for dinner. I bet you some women will order a glass of wine and they won't drink it. Other people are not going to order anything. And then we're all going to go out dancing afterwards. So that'll be fun to see how lit everybody gets on the dance floor without wine. But yeah, the conversations are way less critical now than they ever were before. And people are really like, oh, yeah, you were ahead of the curve on that one. And it's like, yeah, told you. I hate to say I told you so. I don't say that, but it's so cool to see so many people in real life. You and I are in the industry and then in the niche, so we get the content, we see it. We're in an echo chamber on social media and whatever, but when you see it outside of your social media in real life, you see people, the acceptance changing. It's like, it's a beautiful thing.
Yeah. I mean, especially like you brought up, shelves in grocery stores. Like I know about the non-alcoholic bottle shops. I know that I want to go find like the best of that stuff, but it's really telling when I walk into a local grocery store and there's not just a little sliver anymore. There's a whole section, and that's there for a reason. The grocery store isn't pushing it in hopes that it takes off. It's there because it's taken off. And that's really big. A lot of folks don't really think about like how much their life has changed just because there are better options now. Like if you think about how much of your life was like tethered to alcohol, it's like I'm doing this, like alcohol is helping me do this. Without alcohol, I wouldn't be here with these people doing these things. And then you remove alcohol, you're in those spaces, you're with those folks. Now you've got something good in your hand that you don't even have to think about it anymore. You thought about it when it was a bad option because you're like, man, I wish I just had what I usually drank. This sucks. I'd rather have nothing. And now if you've got something good in your hand and you're sipping that non-alcoholic gin and tonic, that when it hits your tongue, you just recognize it as I'm in a good time with good people and I'm
Yes.
not being
Yeah.
affected
Yeah.
by this. And it really helps folks realize that like I can go live a life without alcohol.
Yeah.
It isn't my life without alcohol. It's a life without
You
alcohol.
can continue living life. I think that it's not a hard stop. I think a lot of people think they have to stop drinking, and honestly, I think that that's changing. I think that's really changing now, but I think years ago it was like, oh, my life is over if I stop drinking. And I think now, thanks to the non-alcoholic drinks industry, I really, and a lot of the content online is really showing your life continues. There is no hard stop. It continues in a very similar way. You're battling your demons, obviously, on your own. It's a lonely path sometimes, but your life still can continue, and you can, bring something to a party. You can order something at a restaurant or a bar now that doesn't have alcohol in it. You can choose not to have stuff in your house, or have stuff in your house that makes you feel good at 5 o'clock. I mean, one of the videos that has done well several times on Instagram for me is just me cooking dinner and having a glass of wine and saying like I still have wine when I cook dinner. It's just non-alcoholic now. To your point about it hits your tongue and it feels familiar and you're like, okay, this is good. I'm relaxing. You actually don't need the alcohol to relax. you can train your brain to be like, oh, you're having a drink while you're cooking, you're having something, quiet time of whatever you're doing in the kitchen with a glass of wine, taking that second to have a glass of non-alcoholic wine is relaxing in and of itself.
Yeah.
And that's the cool thing, is like sitting on the couch with a mocktail. That's the relaxing thing. It wasn't the alcohol.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's, anyway, sort of again off tangent there a little bit, but I'm so glad that these things have sort of changed. It's so fast too. Sometimes I think, I'm like, it took a long time for the world to see that smoking was bad. Way longer. There was way more resistance. And I think thanks to digital content, thanks to our connected society, messages like this can just spread like lightning.
Mm-hmm.
And we're at a really great place now where even celebrities are on board for this lifestyle.
Yeah, and it's not all just this is why it's bad for you. This is how great it can be without it.
Yeah, yeah. That's what Some Good Clean Fun is all about, is truly living a joyful life with less or no alcohol in your life.
Sarah, what do you love about yourself?
This is a funny question. My mom used to always complain she's a narcissist and we don't get along. Oh, I talk too much. Chatty Cathy. Chatty Cathy. But I think that's my best trait, is that I talk to everyone. I meet so many interesting people. So that's one. But the other thing too is, like, this whole process has taught me that the thing I love about myself is I'm always willing to pivot. I'm resilient. I'm like, what next? What's coming next? And how I don't let things get me down. I think that, like, sobriety definitely could have been a victim, but it's taught me that I really love that I can just, like, keep going, chugga chugga, no matter what life comes at me. So I talk a lot and I'm resilient. So those are the two things.
That's great. Sarah, thanks for spending time with me today.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm thrilled to be part of this community and to have the chance to chat with you.